All right, we'll go ahead and get started here. So my name is Brianna Broberg, and I am one of the regional managers at Welcoming America. As I said, we're just so happy and excited to have all of you here with us today. Before we get started with the main content of today's webinar, I do want to just review a couple of quick housekeeping items with you. The webinar is being recorded, and in the next few days, you'll receive the link to the full recording, as well as any follow-up materials or links that are shared during today's call. In an effort to provide a secure and a welcoming environment, please just note that any AI bots that pop up will be removed from the call. If you need any technical help related to the Zoom platform, please use that chat box. If you're having any trouble hearing or seeing what we're sharing, please just let us know. And my colleague Megan, who's here on the call with us today, will be happy to jump in and help troubleshoot as best we can. We are going to have an opportunity for some audience Q&A at the end of today's presentations. We're going to hear from a couple of guest speakers, and I know that there are going to be some questions for those folks. So we'll just encourage you to utilize the Q&A feature in Zoom to ask any questions. You can put those questions in at any point, and just know that we will get to those towards the end of today's presentation. But you can feel free to put those questions in whenever something occurs to you. I can see the names of the folks who are joining us in the call, whether you've shared in the chat or who are our participants. So I see some familiar names, but also some folks that are new to me. So really happy to have all of you here. For those of you who may not be familiar with Welcoming America, we are a national nonprofit, nonpartisan organization that leads a movement of inclusive communities working to ensure that everyone belongs and are valued contributors to the success of those communities. Our member network is made up of over 300 local nonprofit organizations and local governments from across the country who benefit from expert coaching, strategy planning, and access to member-only events and resources, as well as diverse and practical communities of practice. And if you're interested in learning any more about Welcoming America, we'd encourage you to go to our website, which is just welcomingamerica.org. Today's presentation is about libraries as community connectors and how they foster and create those community connections during Welcoming Week and all year round. And in my role at Welcoming America, I'm really fortunate to get to interact with a lot of our different network member libraries. And it's always just such a great reminder to me about how many fantastic things libraries do that oftentimes I think people might not even realize that they have access to in their communities, from programming to resources, opportunities for learning, so much more. And libraries, whether they are based in schools, public libraries, academic libraries, they all play an important role in helping communities to become more welcoming. Truly welcoming communities become so by utilizing a whole of community approach to welcoming. And it's my belief that oftentimes libraries are at the heart of bringing together different groups and sectors and individuals in community around issues of shared interest. And so I'm really just thrilled to be able to highlight some of that in today's webinar through our fantastic guest speakers. I'm going to introduce those speakers in just a moment, but before we dive into conversation with them, I wanted to share just a little bit about what Welcoming Week is, in case it's not familiar to folks, to sort of set the table to anybody who is maybe new to Welcoming Week or just not entirely clear on what we're talking about when we say that. So as I mentioned, Welcoming America supports local welcoming work in communities across the country. And one of the ways that we do that is through our annual Welcoming Week celebration. It takes place in September each year. This year, it'll be September 13th through the 22nd. And through Welcoming Week, organizations and communities bring together neighbors of all backgrounds to build strong connections and to affirm the importance of building welcoming and inclusive communities for our shared future. And this can be done through events and gatherings, art projects, cultural celebrations and presentations, festivals, story walks, narrative exchange, and more. And those Welcoming Week celebrations can in turn serve as an on-ramp to engage community partners in deepened and continuing welcoming work throughout the year. And Welcoming Week can also be a time to uplift and highlight the great welcoming efforts that are taking place in your community every day. So you'll hear more about Welcoming Week and other local welcoming work from our guest speakers. And I'll also share some resources that Welcoming America has available for you to use as you celebrate Welcoming Week in your community. But for now, I'm going to turn things over to our esteemed guests. We're joined by two fantastic guest speakers today, Ricky Brooks from the St. Louis County Library and Selena Torona from the American Library Association Subcommittee on Services to Refugees, Immigrants, and Displaced Persons. We're going to hear from both of them individually, and then, as I mentioned, later in the webinar, you'll have a chance to ask any questions that you might have for them. But you can feel free, as I said, to put those questions in the Q&A feature at any point throughout today's presentations. So first, we'll start with Ricky. Ricky Brooks currently serves as the Adult Literacy Coordinator for a Welcoming America member organization, the St. Louis County Library. And her primary responsibilities are to lead initiatives and provide quality programs and services to promote adult literacy and education. And this includes topics of basic literacy, English language, and managing the Excel Adult High School program. Ricky is truly passionate about educating adults and providing them with the knowledge to not only change their lives, but also equip them with the skills to make positive contributions to their communities. So Ricky, thank you so much for being here with us today. We're so
Thank you so
excited to
much
hear
for
from you.
having me.
Yes, absolutely. So as we get started, I wonder if you would want to just tell us a little bit about yourself and about the St. Louis County Library System.
Sure. So it may seem an odd journey to be an adult educator working at a library, but it has been a perfect relationship. So I've been working in adult education for about 20 years, and part of that involved me working with individuals who are immigrants and refugees who are needing basic language skills, basic reading skills. And so with the county library, I have the privilege of being able to serve a very diverse community. The St. Louis County Library System consists of about 20 branches, and we are in literally every nook and cranny of this very large county. And in terms of circulation, we are the busiest library in the state of Missouri. And currently, there are over 500,000 people in St. Louis County with St. Louis County Library cards.
Wow, that is impressive and sounds like a lot of work, but also a lot of great opportunities for connection and for learning. I wonder if you can share with us how St. Louis County Library first started to participate in Welcoming Week. How, why, when, kind of all the things.
All of that, sure. So in a previous role, I was introduced to Welcoming America, and I immediately felt a true connection with the work of Welcoming America. And when I got to St. Louis County Library, my focus at the time was to get their adult high school program established. But what I noticed is that in St. Louis City, which is its own separate county, there is a heavy immigrant and refugee population that is serviced by the International Institute. And one of the things I was hoping was that St. Louis County Library System could also be a resource center for individuals that once they become comfortable within the St. Louis City area and they begin to transition out into the suburbs in the St. Louis County area, that we could be their resource center. And it reminded me of the work of Welcoming America. So I want to say around 2021 was the first time we held a Welcoming Week event. And it was a great idea, I thought, at the time, that was called, I named it Arch Arrivals. And the purpose of Arch Arrivals was to get people to tell their stories about their arrival into St. Louis and to share their experiences, because people, when they hear the stories of immigrants and refugees, they realize that they have so much in common with them. And I thought this would be a wonderful way for the library to build community. And these stories would be published on BiblioBoard, which offers an e-media collection for Missouri libraries. And I was super excited about it. The unfortunate thing is we only got a couple of stories, but it was a great introduction to Welcoming Week because it got people interested. As far as our staff, they became quite interested in Welcoming Week.
Yeah, I mean, that it's a great reminder that, first of all, it's really great to just participate, to try something, to start something, but also even if the results don't turn out to be exactly what you were hoping for, you can build off of that. There are things you can learn. So I wonder then if you can share with us maybe a little bit about how your approach to Welcoming Week may have changed since that initial event, or kind of how you're approaching things more recently.
Absolutely. So when that wasn't the grand success I was hoping it would be, it did again trigger an interest, however, with all of the branch staff. So what I decided was, we have these 20 branches that we have staff all over the county that were interested in Welcoming Week and what it was and how they could participate next year. And so I thought, well, first, the most important thing is to educate them on what Welcoming Week is, what the great work of Welcoming America is, and then also make sure they understood the plethora of resources we already had within our branches and also expose them to the resources we could offer patrons in their own local neighborhoods. So I came up with this bright idea to have two branch staff, and each of them would take on the responsibility of making sure they were aware of all of the resources and all of the educating materials we had on our shelves that could be a part of our welcoming efforts. So I start calling them welcoming ambassadors. And basically, what I did was, yeah, I educated them on what it means to truly make people feel welcomed when they enter a branch. And I wanted them to imagine themselves in the shoes of someone who's in a foreign country with a new language, trying to function in everyday life and what it feels like walking into a building that may seem like quasi-government. So we've had some amazing conversations and really talked about how each branch can assess and service the communities that live around their branches.
Welcoming ambassadors. I love that. That's such a great title, and a really great approach. Highlighting the things that you already have. It's not always about sort of reinventing the wheel. It's how can we uplift what we've got, and how can we think about it in a different way?
Yeah.
So I wonder then if you would share with us if you've already started planning for Welcoming Week this year. Kind of what are you thinking about, or what might your plans look like?
So our branch staff are already in the works and planning some things. And if you don't mind sharing the one slide I wanted to make sure everyone got to see is just some of the things that we've already done in the past. But this year we are looking at having interactive workshops, film screenings, multicultural art exhibitions, and even some book discussions. And so we've had in the past branches that did window displays to make sure people were aware of Welcoming Week and it made them feel welcome. We've done book displays. My favorite probably is the recipe swap that we had from different cultures. Individuals were asked to come in and share a recipe from their culture. And it was basically like a recipe exchange. And then, of course, the Global Candy Program is always a hit with the kids. And one really very successful Welcoming Week event they had at one of our branches was a scavenger hunt for kids, which involved them recognizing the flags of different countries or other cultural icons. And it really gave parents and children the opportunity to explore and begin to also want to research about how they can be a part of welcoming in their community.
That's fantastic. Such a wide variety of ways that you can approach, and things that are interesting and accessible to a variety of different folks. Younger folks who have been in the community for a short amount of time, a longer amount of time. That's really fantastic. I wonder, in addition to Welcoming Week, as I mentioned at the top of this webinar, I know that libraries are such a big part of the fabric of their communities, and that Welcoming Week is just one moment in time, but that you all engage in welcoming work throughout the year. And so I wonder if you would want to share with us other ways that St. Louis County Library engages in welcoming work, in addition to Welcoming Week, and also maybe if you ever engage with other partners or community stakeholders in any of that welcoming work, who those folks might be or what that might look like.
Sure. And in the next slide, you'll see we do partner as much as possible with some of the other community programs that service the immigrant and refugee population. One is the International Institute. And one of the things we do is we definitely participate in their annual Festival of Nations, which is an amazing event that's held in one of the larger parks in St. Louis. And we go out and make sure that we're providing resources and information at that event. We also work with the St. Louis Mosaic Project, who offer a lot of workforce development resources and professional development resources to the immigrant and refugee population, and we partner with them as well. And then the Immigrant Service Providers Network is a group of about 50 organizations in St. Louis that service the immigrant and refugee population. And we all work together to share information to ensure that we're offering wraparound services. And so we work with all of these organizations. And the other thing that we're doing internally is we're trying to make sure that we have informal English conversation groups at all of our branches. And again, we've come up with a catchy name to try to get people in the door, and it's called Cafe English. And what we're doing with that program is we're encouraging people who have intermediate to advanced English skills to come in and to practice speaking English, but it's also an opportunity for native English speakers to come in and have conversations with individuals that they maybe never would speak with in a grocery store or in a retail facility. So we try to make sure that we provide space where people can then come together as a true community in these neighborhood branches. And then last but not least, we try to make sure that we're also celebrating cultures each month. So whatever month it is, if it's Asian and Pacific Islander month or Hispanic month, Heritage Month, we're always planning, celebrating programs around those cultures so that no matter who you are, you feel welcome. And we have a very large Bosnian community. And one of the things we've been working with them is to also try to find materials that we can keep on the shelves that make them comfortable and make them want to come into our branches and feel welcome.
Well, that's a fantastic approach. I think, yeah, it's really important to be thinking about not just here we have this one time a year that we're thinking about or engaging in these activities, but how can we really bake that into the everyday aspects of work? And as you say, it's so important for people to just know that they can go someplace and feel like they belong. It's a safe space, it's a comfortable space. And then that provides opportunities for people to be able to engage maybe in a deeper, more substantive way than they might otherwise have the opportunity with folks of different groups or different affinities. So thank you for sharing those examples. The last question I want to ask for now, and I know we'll have some Q&A from audience attendees a little bit later, but I wonder if you have any thoughts, advice or suggestions that you might give to other libraries or to the community partners that they work with who might be interested in either participating in Welcoming Week or in doing other welcoming work together, like some of the things that you've mentioned in your community. Any thoughts that you might share with other folks?
Sure. Number one, visit the Welcoming America website and utilize the Welcoming Week toolkit. I don't think I could have gotten anywhere without that toolkit. So that's my first bit of advice.
And I didn't
Secondly,
even have to pay you to say that. So that's
you
fantastic.
didn't. You didn't. And I definitely recommend that as a starting point. And what it does is it's going to inspire you and trigger you into coming up with your own creative ways of celebrating Welcoming Week. And you know your community and you'll know exactly what's going to work in your branches. So number one, the toolkit. Number two, don't be afraid if it doesn't work out, try and try again. Sometimes events don't work out. Sometimes people don't attend or you don't get a lot of submissions. It's okay. And, plan events, but also have something passive like a book display or like, a DVD display or even a candy exchange. Um, that way you don't feel like you failed. And then last but not least, I would also suggest that, and no one has paid me to say this, but become a member of Welcoming America. I mean, even as an individual, I would count it as a badge of honor to be a part of such wonderful work. But as a member, you have access to staff that can help you with planning your events. They can help you with networking with other welcoming members that will be able to help you connect and learn about what works and what doesn't work. And I think that Welcome America Network can be quite beneficial as well.
Well, thank you for all of that advice, Ricky, and also for your kind words. We're just so glad to have you as a part of the network, to have St. Louis County Library as part of the network, and so glad that we're able to talk to you today and hear from your experience. We really appreciate it, and I know we'll get to hear more from you as we move to the Q&A portion of the presentation a little bit later. So thank you so much again for being here with us today.
My pleasure.
And now I want to open things up for our next guest speaker, Selena Torona. Selena has been a member of the Services to Immigrants, Refugees, and Displaced Persons Subcommittee of the American Library Association since 2022, and she's going into her second term as co-chair. And Selena works for the Daly City Public Library as a library assistant. In 2023, she served as a project director for California Humanities Library Innovation Lab, which focused on exploring new ways of engaging immigrant communities through public humanities programming. So welcome, Selena. And I'm going to go ahead. You had shared some slides with me, so I'm going to share those so that everybody can see. Here we go.
Yeah, so hi everyone, I'm Selena, and I'm here as, the co-chair for SRIDP. Can we go to the next slide? So just to introduce you all to SRIDP, we are the Services to Refugees, Immigrants, and Displaced Persons Subcommittee. We are part of ODLOS, the Office for Diversity, Literacy, and Outreach Services, and we were established in 2018. I've got a little org chart at the bottom so you can kind of see where we stand in the larger scheme of ALA. And our role is to support and promote ALA, libraries, and communities to ensure that libraries provide the best possible services to support refugees, immigrants, and displaced persons. So if you want to move on to our next slide, and this is our Welcoming Week toolkit. So we originally released this in 2020 before a lot of things happened. And so in 2022, when I joined, we kind of were taking another look at the toolkit and realizing that maybe there were some things that we could reformat, but both publications are on our website and they're both still very, very helpful resources. We have suggested activities that you can use at your library during Welcoming Week, sources of funding, case studies at various libraries for how they got started and kind of what their process was, as well as options for celebrating year-round, which we know is so important to continue this work year-round. So let's see, trying to think of how to describe this. Oh, or we'll go on to the next slide. But looking at this year's,
sorry, I went back. Apologies.
We're good for for this year, we are finished with our working draft, and I wanted to highlight some sections of that that have changed a little bit from our 2020 version. So yeah, if you move on to our next slide. We have our funding section. I put like a little screen grab of that. So our 2020 version was largely focused on national sources of funding, but we really wanted to make sure this time around that we gave examples of funding that you can receive at the state and local levels. And so, for example, my library has personally benefited from two of these. We received last year a California Humanities Library Innovation Lab grant, which we used to create a series of programs. We did story times with snacks where we had bilingual story times sharing foreign languages from our community, as well as foods from those cultures. We also did an in-library food tour with that money. And so we got restaurants from within a half-mile radius of our library to come and bring food. And we would, yeah, share kind of the really diverse options for food around our library and show like how our community shows up in these ways. And then at the local level, our local or our county immigrant services office helped us out by getting us an author visit to use for one of those story times. And we were able to have just a really good partner in them. So definitely look at options like these if any of these are your states, or see where you can partner and get funding for these programs, because there's money there and it really helps us. If you want to move on to our next slide, we have some case studies as well. So the ones from the 2020 toolkit are a lot longer and don't take into account as much the changes that came into play right after. And so we were really hoping to make these case studies and the toolkit as a whole more timeless, more usable for the long term. And that included looking at a variety of options, a variety of type of libraries. We are still trying to find school and academic library sources before we publish at the end of the year, but we currently have examples from small and rural libraries, which I have one of up on the screen, as well as a couple of large and urban library examples. So definitely check those out if you're looking, yeah, for examples of what other libraries have done. Next slide. So lastly, this is a working draft, our 2024 version. And so we are actively seeking out feedback. If anyone takes a look at our toolkit and sees something that they need more information on, or they feel like something's missing, or just any sort of feedback that they would like to give, please scan the QR code, or I believe it'll end up in the chat, but anywhere that you can just find ways that we can improve, we are enthusiastically looking for that. So please feel free to look at our toolkit and send us feedback. And we are hoping to have that published, and Welcoming America will be promoting it at the end of the year, hopefully when it's done. So yeah, if anyone has any other questions or wants to reach out regarding SRADP and our work, the ALA or our ALA website should be in the chat as well. And you can find contact information for our ALA liaison on the bottom of the page. So yeah, thanks.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Selena. As you mentioned, my colleague Megan has been putting some links in the chat to access the earlier version of the toolkit, the live, excuse me, revision as that's happening, the feedback form, and also the ALA SRIDP website, so you can learn more about what they're doing, who's involved, and how to get connected if you have questions or are looking to do some follow-up. So I really appreciated you kind of walking us through what the toolkit looks like and some of the things that are involved there, but also knowing that you yourself work in a library, wondering if you wouldn't mind to share with us a little bit about either your own participation in Welcoming Week or welcoming work in your library, or anything maybe interesting that you heard from other ALA member libraries in the course of finding these case studies about how folks are engaging. Anything that you'd like to share, successes, challenges, whatever it might be.
I mean, one of our huge successes, as I shared, was, yeah, last year using that California Humanities grant to really create huge programs to engage with our local community. It took a lot of work. We attended our school district's immigrant outreach night and tried to just get as much information as possible for what our community wanted to see, what these members of the community in particular were interested in receiving from us. And so that was really valuable and kind of led us to where we got with the food tours and also adding some non-cataloged foreign language materials. And so we got like Arabic materials that the library doesn't have in circulation as non-cataloged items that patrons without library cards could borrow and take home without having to worry about, oh, I don't have my ID yet to show you where I live. I don't feel comfortable getting a library card just yet. Just making sure that we have as many accessible resources in addition to our programming. So that is one success. Outside of our library, I did want to share one of our members, Haley, is part of the Lena project, and they have a listserv and a lot of resources promoting what libraries are doing for immigrant communities. And so, yeah, wanted to throw that out there. I did not give you guys a link, but I will.
Amazing. Yeah, thank you so much. I know a lot of people would be interested in that, including myself. That's fantastic. I just want to uplift something that you said about the importance of not only feedback, but really kind of co-design as you're thinking about the ways that you're engaging in Welcoming Week and in welcoming efforts more broadly. So fantastic to get the insights and thoughts of the folks who you're serving, who you're wanting to make comfortable, to provide additional accessibility for. Lots of us have good ideas, but it's also really great to hear from other folks about what they'd like to see, what's important. So really happy that you shared that with all of us. I wonder if you can share any more about other welcoming efforts, either that SRIDP engages in or encourages libraries to engage in outside of Welcoming Week. Are there other things that you think are people might like to know, think about that they could do in their libraries or their communities as well?
Yeah, on our website, we have a couple of resources, and I think we're continuing to add this year as our new terms start. But we have a toolkit on engaging multilingual communities and English language learners in the US, as well as our Libraries Respond page that is centered on immigrants, refugees, and asylum seekers.
Fantastic. And then I wonder, sort of similarly to what I asked Ricky at the end of her presentation, if you have any other suggestions or advice, either from your own experience or based on what you've heard during the development of the toolkit or from other community partners, suggestions or advice for how folks can get involved in Welcoming Week or other welcoming work. Any thoughts that you have to share about that would be welcome.
Also not being paid for this, but one of my favorite resources to look at was the list of all of the programs that are happening during Welcoming Week, because you can specifically look for, like, I think there's a search bar, and so you could put in library and see like all of the libraries that are participating and all the work. And I think it's just a really good resource to, crowdsource your ideas, seeing what has worked and gathering that way. And then again, I want to push anyone that can partner with you to get you funding. They will also usually have really good ideas. Like our county immigrant services offered us, like if we wanted to do a movie night, if we wanted anything in addition to that author event. We also had puzzle pieces that everyone was invited to decorate. And then the county had the like full completed puzzles touring all the libraries around us to kind of show what our communities can build. And so, yeah, definitely see what your partners have to offer.
Yeah, fantastic advice. Thank you so much for sharing that and for telling us more about the toolkit and opportunities to get involved and connected with that. I know I've seen some questions coming in, so we're going to have some good Q&A in just a couple minutes here. But thank you so much, Selena, for sharing those thoughts and sharing your slides with us. Before we move into the Q&A portion of the presentation today, I did want to just share a couple of things, jumping off of what Selena and Ricky both shared, that there are some resources that Welcoming America has that might be helpful for you all as you're planning and producing Welcoming Week events in your local communities. So as we discussed, Welcoming Week is an annual celebration. It takes place in September each year. This year it will be from September 13th through the 22nd. And this year our theme for Welcoming Week is a call to come together as individuals and groups to celebrate our strengths and our differences, and to recognize that we're at our best when we're all in. And so through your local events and special initiatives, you can share how your community is modeling a We're All In approach as you celebrate Welcoming Week and as you engage in welcoming work all year round. So you're not required to utilize the theme in your celebrations and your events, but there's a jumping off point if you'd like to utilize it. Throughout today's presentations, we heard some great examples and suggestions from Ricky and from Selena about how libraries and other community stakeholders can participate in Welcoming Week, but I know that still sometimes it can be challenging as you are getting started to think about, where do I start? How do I start? They had some really great suggestions. And to help with that, in addition to what they've already shared and the fantastic Welcoming Week for Libraries toolkit from SRIDP, I also just want to highlight a few other resources that are available on the official Welcoming Week website, which is welcomingweek.org. We make it really easy to find. And the website is also available in multiple translations just for increased accessibility. You can sign up for the Welcoming Week newsletter, and that'll help you stay informed about the available resources, what's new, any announcements as they become available. And then we have a Welcoming Week toolkit as well, which has a variety of different tools and resources that you can utilize. There are some communication tools, things helping you to do outreach to folks that you're wanting to partner with in your community, social media templates. There are logos and other visual assets, like we have these customizable printable signs that say I'm a welcomer in 13 different languages. We have an event planning guide that outlines critical steps in planning an event, strategies for how to find and connect with potential partners in your area. And as we heard from Selena and Ricky today, they shared really great examples of events and initiatives that have been successful for them and for other libraries in the past. And in this Welcoming Week toolkit, we also highlight 4 case studies from across the globe that dive into the goals, the logistics, and the results of successful events that help build belonging. And they include examples of events hosted by a nonprofit organization, community foundation, a local government, and a tourism board to just help you get inspired for planning your own event, for partnering with those folks or other community stakeholders in whatever sector or community that you might be a part of. And finally, as Selena just mentioned, we do have an event map, and we would encourage anyone to add an event that you might be having for Welcoming Week onto the official Welcoming Week map that is located on that website. You can share what you're doing to celebrate, and then there is that search function. You can look and see what others in your community are doing, what's happening across the globe, so that you know what's going on, so that you can get ideas for what you might want to do in your community as well. And so with that, I'm going to stop talking, and I'm going to turn things over to our audience Q&A for your questions. We've seen them coming in throughout today's presentation, and so we're excited to have the opportunity to answer some of those questions. Let me just look. So there's a question here that I think can be for either or both of you, Selena or Ricky. How far in advance did you start planning any of the Welcoming Week events that you've done for your libraries? Selena?
I can go first.
Oh, okay, great.
So, because our marketing and communications department has a heavy workload, they do tend to ask us to have events planned well in advance so that they have 6 to 8 weeks to get promotions out. So, September comes around pretty quickly, especially if you're busy with summer reading club at your libraries. So for us, we start trying to brainstorm in May, like mid-May. We try to brainstorm and, have things finalized, hopefully, by mid-July. So yeah, pretty early.
Fantastic. And Selena, what about for you?
For most of last year's programming, I want to say that we made sure we got on the radar for potential partners in like March, just so that they'd be thinking of us later on in the year when planning out Welcoming Week. And then in July, we really started to like hit the ground running with, okay, here's all the stuff that we want to do. How do we get it all going? So that by September, it was mostly like all set, and we really just had to sit back and enjoy.
That's always nice as well. Yeah, absolutely. Ricky, I know that there was a question that was asked that you answered earlier, but I want to just uplift it in case some other folks might be interested as well. If you could give more details about the global candy swap or candy program and the recipe swap that you talked about. Folks
Yeah,
a
so
little bit more detail.
the with the recipe swap, there were our branch staff created recipe sheets, and they had them on a table for patrons to come in, and they could, if they maybe learned a new recipe, or if they had a recipe that they were familiar with and just wanted to share, they would put it on the recipe sheet. At one of the branches, they created a recipe display right where the table was. And at another branch, they did a community cookbook where they kind of put it together and made it a cookbook. And then for the candy program, it was at a couple of different branches, if I remember correctly. What they would do is they created like a map, and people could guess where they thought the candy came from. I think that they didn't have it automatically displayed, like where or identifiable where the candy came from, and people could guess. And then the other branch also did a global candy display where they just tell people, you're welcome to a piece of candy, and they had different flyers with information about those specific countries and the origin of the candy.
Oh, very cool. All of those are really fun approaches, and love some interaction in addition to a little something sweet. Very nice. Okay, so I have another question for both of you. Wondering about if folks are getting started with Welcoming Week, maybe their community hasn't celebrated it before. If someone asks you about Welcoming Week or why you're celebrating it, how do you describe what Welcoming Week is, or how do you explain your participation? Ricky, you're still unmuted. Can I start with you?
Oh, absolutely. So, I would say that was probably the first question I got from, our leadership is, what is Welcoming Week? And, I just let them know that it's an annual series of events where we really want people to come together in the spirit of unity. And it's an opportunity for us to make new connections, but it's also an opportunity for our library branches to do a better job of making people in our neighborhood feel like they belong in our branches. I think many times when people are new to a community, they drive past a library and they're like, oh, that's cute. But they don't necessarily know that there are things in that branch that can benefit them and their families, because they're only working on the necessities at the time. And so I wanted it to be clear to our branch staff that these Welcoming Week events will help you get new patrons in the door. And that's our purpose, is to service our community. And we want to make everyone in our community feel like we are open to them and that we are not a closed door and there is no barrier to being in our branches.
That's a great explanation. I'm going to steal some of that when I'm talking about it. Selena, anything that you would want to share on that one?
I mean, Ricky answered it perfectly. Like, it is such a good way to get involved and show people just what the library can do. Like, Welcoming Week aligns so well with how libraries strive to be in general. And so just giving us some time to be really intentional about working with immigrant communities, I think, is so important. Like, I'm lucky that our county had a lot of people working on Welcoming Week before we jumped in. And so I haven't had as much experience in justifying it outside of, explaining to others why we have our toolkit. It's so that, if you haven't done welcoming week before and you don't know what to do, then come talk to us. I think it would be really good for us to add a section on justification now that you've mentioned it. But yeah, sorry.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I'll also say, Selena, just thinking about the toolkit and something that I remember seeing in the initial version that folks talked about is the importance of, when we say welcoming, I think sometimes folks think that we're talking about just welcoming newcomers, and that's incredibly important. And we are so happy to welcome them. It's valuable, and that's something that we need to be sure that we're including. But also just, as you and Ricky both said, letting folks know you are welcome in this space, you belong. And so thinking about all the different folks in community, folks maybe who have been part of a historically marginalized group, whether that has to do with immigration status or some other aspect of their identity, being a space where people feel like they can belong. That's an important part of Welcoming Week, and it's about welcoming for everybody. So thank you both so much for offering those pieces, and also just another plug for that library toolkit, because there's some really great stuff in there. I see a couple of people are just excited about this candy, Ricky. So, which as am I. So I see a couple different questions. One asking about thinking around funding for purchasing multicultural candies, and also thinking about partnering with multicultural grocery stores to see if they want to partner to provide candy. So I don't know anything that you might want to add to either of those pieces, Ricky, but just want to raise those here.
Absolutely. So we are blessed enough that we were able to give $50 to each branch, particularly just to purchase items for Welcoming Week, in addition to their own individual branch budget. So everyone who purchased candy did use the $50 we were able to give them. And we are lucky again because St. Louis is a pretty diverse community. We have multiple international grocery stores. And so it's pretty easy to go in and find those candies. But if not, you can definitely probably find them online. And as far as funding for that, I would absolutely encourage you to partner with your grocery stores. And I would not only ask you to partner with them so that you can possibly get donated candy, but they are a wonderful, wonderful community board for what's going on in your libraries. And so if you are celebrating Welcoming Week, make sure you take a flyer and put it in that grocery store, and maybe have that grocery store come and maybe they can pass out coupons. And that's a way to get the grocery store into your branch and partnering while also providing you with those free, really good candies.
Yes, excellent suggestions. And actually brings us, it's a good segue to another question sort of around either of your experiences with your partnerships, sort of where did those come from? Did folks come to you and say, we want to partner in Welcoming Week or Welcoming Work, or have you done outreach? Kind of what has that looked like? And also, how have you gotten the word out so that folks know that you're participating in Welcoming Week, or what you're doing to participate in Welcoming Week? Selena, can I maybe turn to you to start?
Sure. So for getting partners, was that the first one?
Yep.
Yeah. It was a lot of legwork. So in my own time, especially like when it came to like finding restaurant owners, for example, last year, I would just eat in the neighborhood and then I'd be like, hey, so the library is working on this, like, do you have experience with this population? What are your thoughts on like participating with us? What would you like to do? And just like getting those conversations going. And then same with, just any partners, making sure that we're on their radar. I sent out so many emails. I just did just as much as possible to cast a wide net and make sure that we could grab anyone who is interested. And what was the second part of the question one more time?
Yeah, letting folks know that you're participating in Welcoming Week or what you're doing. How are you getting the word out about the events that are happening?
Largely social media. Um, I am on our marketing team, and so one of the things that I did was I joined a ton of Facebook groups that seemed to be targeted towards different populations. So like bilingual learning for parents and like just in our community, the Filipino community is huge. And so like NorCal Filipinos and just like throwing our events into Facebook groups to try to catch people where they were at.
Yeah, oh, that's fantastic. All of that. So casting a wide net, going out into community, connecting directly with folks, and then when you're letting people know, finding all of those different places, meeting people where they are, whether that's virtually or in person. That's so important. So thank you so much for those. Ricky, do you have any additional thoughts about building up partnerships and or about letting folks know about your events?
Absolutely. Get out there. Like Selena said, meet people where they are. The blessing is that, I had relationships with the organizations, because when I am not my introverted self, I will get out there and network and make it happen for our patrons. I am blessed to be a part of the International Service Providers Network, where, you know, word of mouth is awesome with them. And one of the other things I would suggest is if you can't attend your local city council or aldermanic meetings and they give you, that public access time to talk about what you're doing, trust me, those government officials love to join in and take pictures at these types of events. And I would also suggest probably your local Rotary Club, if you have one, or Chamber of Commerce. Anywhere where there is business or policy being made, there will be people interested in the welcoming work.
Absolutely. Thank you both so much for that. I have one last question, as I know we're kind of getting to the end of our time. And this is sort of a broader question around welcoming, belonging, and inclusion in libraries. If either of you have experienced or heard of any training or tools that either your library has used or that you're familiar with for library staff, or to share with community members about how to, build common ground across diverse groups or other welcoming or inclusivity focused training that folks either participate in as library staff or maybe share out to let folks know. As we're thinking about these welcoming spaces, it's so important to have places where people feel that they belong and feel safe. And so, sometimes that's not always as easy as we think. There are things that maybe we don't know about how other community members might feel. And so helpful to kind of have some of those tools or resources to help us learn. We don't know what we don't know. So just wondering if either of you have any experience with any of that or anything that you've heard from other folks that you would share or recommend.
Sure. I'm just going to throw the Lena project back in. I have the link here, and so I'm going to. No, I sent that to the hosting panelists again. One sec. Now it's going to everyone. Okay, so going to throw this back in just to give an example of improving library partnerships with immigrant communities. I think they are a great resource and they have a listserv. And so kind of getting in touch with them is great. And then also, yeah, our libraries respond webpage that we will be starting to update this year, but it has a lot in there that can help out.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that. Ricky, anything that you would want to add?
Absolutely, contact your Welcoming America staff. When I held the Welcoming Ambassador training, we did have someone from Welcoming America come in and talk about what it means to be welcoming and ways to be welcoming. We also had someone from the USCIS come in and talk about the citizenship process and how even having those materials available make people feel welcome. And I would say last but not least, common sense and common courtesy are the best training. We all know how we want to be treated. We all know what it feels like to be mistreated. And I think that if we can get staff to just ponder on that. That's probably the best training of all.
Absolutely. Thank you both so much for all of your insights, for your experiences, for the resources that you've shared. We really appreciated your time today, and for answering the great questions that we had from our attendees. As we wrap up, I want to just remind folks that the webinar has been recorded, so we'll share that out with everyone who registered in the next couple of days. And we also would invite you to follow us on our social media channels, subscribe to our YouTube, connect with us on LinkedIn, so that we can continue to share out resources with you. On behalf of Welcoming America and our speakers today, I want to just thank everyone for sharing your time with us. I know how busy you all are, so we appreciate you carving out this time to be here. And also, more importantly, to just thank you for the wonderful work that you all are doing to make communities that are more welcoming, where everyone feels that they can belong and thrive. We really appreciate all that you do. Thank you so much, and have a great rest of your day.